Bonsoir. Merci pour ce film, merci pour ce témoignage et merci pour votre écoute. J'invite maintenant la modératrice Célia Héron, journaliste autant et responsable de la rubrique Société, à monter sur scène, ainsi que les panélistes Kiran Nazish, Arzu Geboula et Nadia Dam.
Merci. Merci à tous d'être restés pour cette conversation qui va être, j'en doute pas, passionnante. Je laisse peut-être nos invités mettre leur casque afin qu'elles puissent avoir la traduction simultanée en anglais. Alors, merci bien sûr pour ce film incroyable. Je vais présenter tout de suite en fait, les personnes qui seront avec moi pour discuter de cyberharcèlement et des femmes journalistes qui en sont victimes. Donc, nous avons sur scène Nadia Daham, qui est chroniqueuse et journaliste en France, qui va nous parler de cyberharcèlement, bien sûr, puisqu'elle en a été victime. Nous avons ensuite Arzu Geboula, journaliste freelance, originaire d'Azerbaïdjan, et que l'on a aperçu dans ce documentaire. Et enfin, la pakistanaise Kiran Nazish, qui est journaliste et directrice et fondatrice de The Coalition for Women in Journalism, basée à New York, qui œuvre dans 7 pays et dont elle nous parlera elle aussi. Alors, peut-être que pour commencer, moi j'avais envie de vraiment trouver une définition en Suisse de ce que c'est que le cyberharcèlement, parce que c'est un mot assez abstrait, dont on a beaucoup entendu parler. Et puis, je suis allée voir en fait sur le site de la prévention suisse de la criminalité, qui en donne la définition suivante. Donc, pour info, plusieurs auteurs qui s'en prennent à une personne pendant un certain temps, via Internet ou via un smartphone, dans le but délibéré de la blesser, de la menacer, de l'humilier ou de la harceler. Ça, c'est une définition que vous avez peut-être entendue pas mal ces dernières semaines, puisque l'actualité a été très largement dominée par l'affaire de la Ligue du LOL, sur laquelle on va revenir, notamment avec Nadia. Donc, pour ceux qui avaient besoin d'un petit rappel, l'histoire de la Ligue du LOL, c'est en fait le fait que le 8 février, Check News, sur le site de Libération, a publié un article qui a ouvertement en fait dénoncé le fait qu'un certain nombre de journalistes français qui n'étaient pas parisiens d'origine mais qui vivaient tous à Paris s'en sont pris à des hommes, des femmes, notamment des féministes, et là encore on y reviendra, pendant plusieurs années, voire pour certains pendant une dizaine d'années, ce qui a à la fois souligné la banalité, comme on l'a dit en introduction de ce film, du cyberharcèlement pour les femmes journalistes, et qui a en même temps permis, de par la réaction énorme qu'il y a eu et de par l'impact médiatique que ça a eu, avec des réactions en chaîne de ministres, de la presse étrangère, etc., de montrer qu'on est quand même à une époque où on prend conscience de l'importance et de la gravité du problème. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on fait de tout ça ? Donc, on peut dire, ça on l'a bien vu pendant le film, que si le harcèlement en ligne touche de nombreuses femmes à travers le monde, les femmes journalistes sont particulièrement exposées d'une part et ciblées. Au passage, je précise que dans toutes les écoles de journalisme, on dit aux étudiants et aux étudiantes qu'ils doivent avoir un compte Twitter. Enfin, je ne sais pas si toi tu confirmes, mais moi en tout cas, quand j'étais à l'école, c'était ça l'idée. Donc, c'est pas vraiment un choix, hein, pour clarifier, d'être sur les réseaux sociaux. C'est vraiment c'est la base, quoi, quand on veut travailler dans ce milieu. Et si les contextes varient beaucoup selon les régimes en place, selon la liberté de la presse des différents pays, on constate quand même à travers ce film que les femmes sont cyberharcelées partout, tout le temps, même là où on pense que en fait, c'est pas le cas. Alors, on plonge tout de suite dans le sujet avec nos invités. Chacune peut peut-être dire un mot du moment où elle-même a mis le mot cyberharcèlement sur la situation à laquelle elles avaient à faire face. Peut-être que Nadia, tu veux commencer. Donc, c'est une chose de recevoir des messages, mais à quel moment tu t'es dit, ok, en fait ça, c'est pas juste des messages comme n'importe quel journaliste pourrait en recevoir, c'est du cyberharcèlement.
Oui, c'est important de préciser qu'effectivement, quand on est journaliste, de toute façon, on reçoit régulièrement des commentaires, des critiques, des insultes racistes, antisémites, etc. Donc c'est quelque chose qui fait partie du quotidien de journaliste auquel on se fait. auquel on s'est fait tous,
Ouais.
ce qui est triste quelque part et ce qui doit nous interroger. Mais effectivement, il y a cette petite musique permanente du commentaire Internet, et il y a le cyberharcèlement et le moment où, enfin, je me suis non, pas formulé le truc comme ça, mais le moment où je me suis dit se passe quelque chose de grave, c'est quand je me suis réveillée tard, parce que je travaillais en matinale radio, et que mon téléphone avait purement et simplement frisé à cause de l'accumulation de messages que j'avais reçus. C'est-à-dire que c'est un message à la seconde sur absolument tous les canaux, Facebook, Twitter, les mails, les tentatives de piratage, évidemment, donc de comptes bancaires aussi. Les inscriptions, et tout ça s'est fait en 2 heures de temps. Les inscriptions à mon nom sur des sites de rencontres, sur des sites pornographiques, pédophiles, diffusion de mon adresse, diffusion de l'adresse de ma fille. Voilà, donc quand j'ai lu tout ça sur mon téléphone dans une seule et même vague, c'est-à-dire que ça n'a pas... il n'y a pas eu d'évolution, voilà, ça n'a pas grimpé comme ça au fil des heures. Ça a été tout de suite de la pure violence, tout de suite de la menace de viol et tout de suite de la menace de mort. Donc là, on se dit qu'on est en train d'être victime d'une attaque. Et très vite, je n'ai pas parlé de harcèlement, mais de persécution plutôt.
Et est-ce que tu peux nous dire en quelques mots à quoi ça faisait suite? Pourquoi
la genèse, ouais. Donc la communauté qui m'a attaquée, mais ils ne sont pas les seuls, évidemment, parce qu'après ils agrègent plein de gens autour d'eux. C'est un forum internet qui s'appelle 1825jeuxvideo.com, qui ne traite ni de jeux vidéo et qui ont ni 18 ans et encore moins 25 ans. Enfin, voilà, c'est des grands garçons, essentiellement des garçons, donc. Et ce sont des spécialistes du harcèlement. Et voilà, donc il y a une espèce d'inception dans cette histoire, c'est que j'ai fait une chronique à la radio pour dénoncer le fait que ces hommes-là avaient harcelé des féministes qui avaient créé un numéro de téléphone spécial sur le harcèlement de rue. Donc j'ai fait une chronique qui dénonçait du harcèlement, et j'ai été harcelée à mon tour. Et voilà, c'est ça la genèse. C'est une chronique radio d'1 minute 30, pas très bonne en plus. Donc j'ai fait un peu les boules qu'elle ressorte à chaque fois. C'était pas ma préférée. Et voilà, ça a commencé comme ça.
Bravo de l'avoir faite. Arzou, toi?
Wow. I think I didn't realize what was happening until I got my first death threat online. The interview that I mentioned in the documentary led to a lot of commentary under that interview on the website. And I remember reading some of the comments and getting shocked over and over again because it was so negative and aggressive and whatnot. But still, it was happening for the first time. I wasn't sure what was going on. I mean, I've received emails before. I've received, comments before. But this was something that was happening under an interview that I gave that was supposed to actually be something good. It was supposed to empower women to go and work and become journalists and, do what they believe in. But it actually backfired. And then actually that interview was copied and pasted onto website of another platform, another news platform. And I was shocked again because, normally that's not how it works. If you're being interviewed for one platform, that's where it stays. So I contacted the journalist who interviewed me, and she said, well, it's not really important. We let them copy our content. And I was like, well, okay, you let them copy your content, but what about the comments? I mean, isn't there editorial policy to look at it, to monitor, to control? And she was like, oh, no, we don't have it. And I was like, well, do you realize what they're writing? And she said, well, don't pay attention. And I was like, how is that possible? And I mean, to be honest with you, again, because it's happening for the first time, you don't really know how to react. You don't know what to do with that comments. You don't really know where to go. And I kind of let go. I decided that maybe, I just not pay attention like she recommended, until I got the death threat. And the death threat was from someone who lived in Istanbul. And it was very specific. It said that I was an Armenian dog, and then I had 3 days left to be buried next to Hrant Dink. And Hrant Dink was the editor of this Turkish Armenian newspaper where I worked as a correspondent at the time. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I should pay attention to because it is a death threat, It's not just someone, threatening with defamation or something else. And I copied the message and I posted it on Twitter, because that's where I have most of my followers, and this is where I share most of my work. And then I got messages from media organizations and organizations that work on to support journalists, and they were telling me that this is very serious, that I need to pay attention, and that I need to go public about this, and they need to write statements, and they need to encourage the governments, both in Azerbaijan and Turkey, to actually look into this. So that was my first, I guess, moment when I understood that this wasn't just, hatred. This was actually something serious, and it could lead to some serious consequences.
It was great that you thought of taking screenshots right away, by the way.
I actually have quite a large collection by now of not just death threats, but other very beautifully written messages of,
I mean, we're laughing here, but it's probably the first thing to do.
Absolutely.
Which victims usually don't always think of doing because they're in shock.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, as I said, before the death threat, I didn't take screenshots of the first comments that were under the interview, because, again, I didn't know that it was part of this online harassment campaign, or that's not the name that I put on it at the time. But it is really important, as I later learned, to have some kind of proof, some documentation, not just for protecting yourself, but actually going back to the perpetrator and telling them, listen, you told me this, you wrote me this, or you've written this about me, like at this time, under this particular comment or post or picture, and you have proof to show it. And I think that's really important, to have that evidence.
Thank you. And for you, Kiran?
Hello.
Yeah. It is on.
It's on. Okay. Well, the first time it happened to me was actually before we knew. It was, I think, 2007 or something, when I first joined Twitter. And I used to work in Pakistan at the time, and I wrote something. I was working for foreign press, and I was freelancing, and I wrote something about India, Pakistan. As you know, India and Pakistan are kind of in conflict most of the time. And if you write something about India, the other country, you become a traitor immediately. So most journalists don't cover these topics, and that goes with every topic, like whatever is not covered is where journalists are generally targeted. So you do expect some sort of retaliation from public. Like Arzu mentioned, like we used to get emails before, so it was like you would get it on your Gmail or Hotmail or whatever. But like the first time my friends started messaging me, and they said, you have a picture online that says, raw agent, go back to India. And that was quite a big deal, because if you live in either of the countries, especially at tense times between the countries, could actually get physically attacked. So your neighbors could turn on you. And your family, and so it becomes very precarious immediately. And this was a time when we were not really familiar or talking about online attacks, what these are, that we were not serious about it. And if you would see these attacks taking place, there was nothing that you could really do, because you didn't know who these people were they in your country, out of the country, etc. So I just had like these pictures of me plastered on the internet, and it becomes very difficult. So we didn't know what to do. But at the time, I think I stayed at home for a while, and I don't think that at that time women were particularly targeted. Like that was what was going on, but we didn't see any such attacks taking place against men. Slowly and gradually, I think that in the next few years, there were a lot of attacks that get really intense in some countries like Pakistan, India, Mexico, like some places where you have more misogyny. Obviously, all these attacks that take place against women journalists, they are a reflection of also the cultural sentiment of you have more misogyny in a country. So we had a lot of attacks online where we would see nude photos of women journalists that were like copy-pasted and photoshopped and all that, that would go online. And slowly and gradually the conversation, I think it started kind of in in the Western countries when we started talking about online attacks on women journalists, when we started seeing them in more countries. But yeah, I think this is from the time when we didn't even know what online attacks were. We didn't know what to do. And now I think what happens actually in some countries, Pakistan and much of Latin America, if you're covering a tough story and you're writing against or criticizing the government or the state, and nothing happens and you don't get trolled online, you're wondering, it's a joke amongst us journalists, like, you don't get trolled, then there's something wrong with your reporting. No one's reading it. Like
the new normal. So, okay, so what you're saying and what we also saw in the movie pretty clearly is the fact that so all journalists are being harassed, but you have a very specific kind of harassment for female journalists linked to sexual attacks, attacks on the way they look, the way they dress, etc., called to murder them. Another interesting question that I would like to ask you, and that we may see a little bit less in the movie, is this whole debate about in real life versus online. And so many people have been minimizing the impact of cyber harassment because of the online aspect of it. So, well, don't worry, it's just pixels. What can you say about this? Peut-être Nadia, tu peux.
Oui, parce que je l'ai beaucoup entendu ça.
J'imagine, ouais.
Ouais. En même temps, j'ai l'impression que c'est quelque chose qu'on dit moins, et notamment en France. On a vu pendant la Ligue du LOL, les débats qu'il y a eu sur ça, on entendait moins cette phrase de. Ouais. C'est pas très grave et il suffit de fermer son ordinateur. Alors non, il suffit pas de fermer son ordinateur, évidemment. Et puis, moi, dans ce qui me concerne, pour mon cas précis, il n'y a pas de différence entre la vraie vie et la vie sur Internet, puisque ça s'est poursuivi dans ma vraie vie de différentes manières. Et la manière la plus spectaculaire, c'est que le jour, donc j'ai porté plainte contre certains de mes harceleurs, et le jour de l'audience qui a été reportée, j'ai été cambriolée pile ce jour-là. Donc l'audience a eu lieu le matin. Et elle a été reportée, donc je suis allée travailler et des personnes sont venues, ont cassé ma porte et une partie du mur, je ne sais pas comment ils ont fait. Ils ont tout retourné dans l'appartement sans rien voler, en dehors de mon ordinateur, de l'ordinateur de ma fille et de sa tablette qui lui sert pour l'école. Mais ils ont bien pris soin de marcher sur ses doudous, sur mon lit, voilà. Et de retourner vraiment l'appartement. Alors évidemment, moi, très vite, je me suis dit que soit j'avais vraiment pas de chance, soit il y avait quand même un lien, ce que m'a confirmé la police. Donc voilà, il y a une traduction dans la vraie vie. Et puis, avant même que ça m'arrive, moi, j'avais peur, par exemple, et je pense que j'avais raison de le craindre. Quand je prenais le métro, quand je marchais dans la rue, je me disais, il n'y a aucune raison pour que je ne croise pas l'un de ces mecs qui me menacent et qui serait très content de tomber sur moi dans la rue. Et qu'est-ce qui va l'empêcher de me mettre un coup de poing comme il l'a promis de le faire. Voilà, donc on est à la fois dans l'hypervigilance, mais on essaye de ne pas être parano, et en même temps, il faut l'être un peu parano.
Mais en plus, moi, ce que je trouve particulièrement problématique dans cette différenciation entre la vraie vie, sous-entendu le reste, et la fausse vie, c'est que même sans qu'il y ait de répercussions physiques, oui, à ton intégrité physique, à ta maison, aux objets, avoir peur devant son ordinateur, c'est déjà la vraie vie.
Exactement. C'est-à-dire vivre dans la crainte permanente. Alors moi, je ne suis plus aujourd'hui victime de harcèlement et je ne suis plus sur les réseaux sociaux, mais je vais demander à un ami tout à l'heure en sortant d'ici d'aller voir sur Twitter si ça n'a pas remis une pièce dans la machine. Donc on a ça quand même en permanence en tête. Et puis l'autre problème de ce discours, c'est pas la vraie vie, c'est que ça entérine la défense des harceleurs qui disent, qui se créent une espèce de double maléfique et qui se différencient eux de leurs personnages sur Internet. Donc en disant ça, on valide cette défense-là, qui consiste à dire qu'on n'est pas la même personne IRL, in real life, et sur le numérique. Donc c'est ça le danger aussi, c'est qu'on valide ça et on encourage les harceleurs à tenir ce type de discours.
Et avant de passer la parole aux autres panélistes, j'avais encore une dernière question. Toi, tu as choisi de quitter les réseaux sociaux. Ce qui, voilà, comme on vient de l'expliquer, a des conséquences directement professionnelles pour des femmes journalistes, peut-être plus encore que pour d'autres branches. Est-ce que tu peux nous dire pourquoi? Et j'ai cru comprendre que tu étais revenue pour la fin de
Je suis repartie.
Et tu es repartie. Oui. Est-ce que tu peux nous en dire deux mots?
Je ne l'ai pas fait tout de suite et j'ai mis du temps à le faire. En plus, quand on est victime de ce type d'opération, on a une espèce d'addiction à ça. C'est-à-dire qu'on passe son temps... voilà, moi, je me réveillais le matin. Le premier truc que je faisais, c'était de regarder mon téléphone. Et donc, le premier truc que je lisais dans ma journée, je vais juste dire à ma fille de boucher ses oreilles parce qu'elle est là. C'était « Tu vas mourir, sale pute ». Donc... voilà, on a ça quand même en permanence. Donc, le seul moyen d'arrêter de voir ça, c'est pas que soit eux ils arrêtent et ils arrêteront pas. C'est moi de me couper de ça. Donc, au bout de quelques mois, je me suis débarrassée de cette addiction en supprimant mon compte Twitter. Facebook, c'est venu un peu plus tard. J'avais 2 comptes Facebook. En plus, je cherche un peu. Et j'ai gardé Instagram, enfin bref. Et j'y suis retournée au moment... j'ai recréé un compte Twitter au moment de la Ligue du LOL parce que j'avais des choses à dire là-dessus. Et puis j'ai vu très vite que c'était pas du tout une bonne idée parce que ça a recommencé assez vite.
Ok, merci. Arzu, do you want to weigh in on one or the other aspects, either the IRL versus real life, or the fact that you may have thought of leaving completely social media platforms?
I mean, it did cross my mind to take a break from social media, but I didn't. I didn't deactivate my accounts. I think the first thing that I asked was my friends to stop sending me all the links and all the comments that were made on Facebook because it was a little too much. And like you, I would also read what was being written, and it was devastating to hear that people who knew nothing about me, knew nothing of years of work and, all the time and effort that you've put in building a reputation as a credible journalist and all the stories that you've done. So basically they have read nothing. They knew nothing of me, but then yet they were so easily and enthusiastically ready to just, pour all of that out online. So I asked my friends actually who were the ones who were tracking. I even had my host father, who I lived in the US for a year. He would write to me saying, "Oh, I've been fighting with this troll on Twitter, and here's what they've said about you." And I was like, "Bill, you're a sweetheart, but really, I need a break from all of this." But one of the reasons why I didn't deactivate the accounts was because I didn't want to completely leave and not be aware of what was going on. For me, it was like, okay, I will let it happen in the background. I won't read everything. And then once I have recovered and I've regained strength to actually, read all of this, I'll come back to it and I'll reread, which is what I did later. It took me a few months to... especially on Facebook. And I think this was like one of the turning points when I stopped using Facebook as much and I turned to Twitter because most of the comments were on Facebook. That's where a lot of stuff was happening. That's where my pictures were being posted. That's where a lot of the comments were being made because that's the difference of platform usage. In Azerbaijan, Facebook is a lot more common among users than Twitter. Which makes a difference in that particular case. But in terms of, aside from that having an impact on real life, I think for me, the personal turning point when I realized what was being said online was affecting my personal life was when they started targeting my family. When the language wasn't just targeting me, but also my parents. And the picture that you saw in the documentary film, me in the arms of a man and a grave of another man. So the man holding me is the president of Armenia, former president of Armenia. And the man in the background it's my father's grave. He passed away in 2012, and this cartoon came out in 2016. And so the person who drew it, they knew that my father passed, and they drew his grave in the background, and they drew his face and his hand covering his face, ashamed of what I've become as a daughter of a prominent person in Azerbaijan. So that was, and this is something that I thought, okay, 2 years later, maybe things will quiet down, because all of this started in 2014 and that cartoon came out in 2016. And I was like, okay, I guess this is not ending anytime soon. But, this is when it crossed the line and it started affecting me personally. Even though, again, as I said in the film as well, like, I wasn't getting doxxed. Like, no one was coming to my house and threatening me. But this was threatening enough that it would create this kind of, like emotional distress.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, we get to see how far people can really, like, how much time they can spend on really trying to destroy someone.
Yeah, and this was just a picture. I mean, there were also television shows, there were newspaper articles, and, this was just a picture that, circulated on social media for maybe a couple months and then resurfaced again sometime later when they remembered about me. But on television, I mean, there were anchors who've interviewed my father for commentary on politics in Turkey and Azerbaijan, who would then use his name and be like, oh, look what has become of his daughter, like, look what she's doing now, that kind of stuff. So it was quite
really
interesting.
true.
Yeah.
How about you, Kiran?
Yeah, interesting indeed. But I want to say that, today we live, the internet is part of all of our lives. And the threats that take place online are the ones that cannot take place in the physical world. So there are all kinds of people and sources that these threats are coming from. They're coming from the state, they're coming from individuals who do not like your ideology. They're coming from, people who are in their basement who have nothing else to do. So they're coming from all kinds of places, and depending on where you are and what the context and all of that. But I think it's a tool that is used. It is a powerful tool that can be used from an anonymous user or a group of users to attack women journalists, specifically to silence them. It's a very effective tool because actually a lot of women journalists do go offline. We, in my organization, we have been working for 2 years, and we have spoken to hundreds of journalists who have been targeted both physically and online. And I think that we have a numerous number of cases when these attacks actually take a form of real-life threats. Some of our colleagues who have been, for example, attacked online, scandals, there are scandals about them being in relationship with another minister whom, say, the state was unhappy with. So the state wanted to actually attack the minister, but they were like, oh, let's have an affair with the journalist, because it was, because if you're attacking a woman journalist online, people get really emotional about that, and everyone wants to participate. And if you're in a country where women are not necessarily liked, like I'm also talking about countries where women who work in society, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, lots of Muslim countries, a lot of Middle Eastern countries, Libya, Egypt, we have a lot of examples, like my brain will drown if I even start thinking about them, where women journalists are seen as, to be honest, prostitutes in many places if they work in society, especially if they work in media. So all these connotations that really sort of reflect online, and then if, say, a government official or someone in the state wants to silence a journalist, I do know this from interviews from friends who are ministers in different places, where they would actually choose to target women journalists online with their team of trolls because it's more effective. And they would actually avoid attacking male journalists because it doesn't really work. It doesn't get other people emotional. And I think in the documentary there was, in one of the there was this part where graphics, what was that? One of the organizations that was tracking down these trolls, it literally works like that you have, like, say, you hire 20 people to troll a specific journalist or a group of women journalists, and then it spreads, and then it becomes thousands. And then it becomes uncontrollable, and then there's no way that you can respond. So you can either go offline, or nothing really works. Once your reputation is ruined online, you can't. These days in 2018-19, you can't go back. people do believe it affects your life, it affects your work, it affects the assignments that you get as a woman journalist. And if you work in a news organization, in a responsible news organization, you do get bodyguards. But if you're a freelance journalist and you get like $500 a month, which is the reality of how women freelance journalists work these days, you don't get to secure yourself. So I do want to point out that these online attacks in many, many places, we have at least 12 cases in the last year and a half that have taken place physically and become physical attacks and have taken place offline, including attacks that have physically gone outside of women's houses and attacked, like broken windows, lots of examples. One of our fellows, we have a fellowship program, and one of our fellows, she's a journalist, she covers Eastern Europe, and last year she was covering the far right. So this is Europe, and we're not talking about the Middle East or South Asia or Latin America, right? You would say that reasonably less misogyny, but Europe is really neglected. But so she was being attacked online, and there were trolls, but she was going and covering this far right rally, and then I think that accidentally someone posted a photo of her while she was covering, and she was in the middle of the rally, and the trolls, she met people who were trolling her online. And she was ambushed, and thankfully she had a male friend with her, and they were able to get out. But you could be in situations like that where you could actually anonymous people who could be bots, and sometimes they're anonymous people, individuals. They could become your physical threat, and you cannot do much about it. So I do want to point out that in terms of it's very important that we have been talking about online threats. I've been on panels for the last, 4 years, online threats, and I'm kind of really tired about talking about it because it's like the same, it takes physical form, it affects your health, causes PTSD. Almost all women journalists that I know who have been attacked online, the first time you see the message, the first time you see someone talking about rape, this happens every time, and it's happened to you many times before, but every time it has a physical effect on your body. Your blood pressure rises, you feel traumatized, you don't want to see it, you want to stay offline, but you also have to do your job, and sometimes you're resilient, you go back online, and all of that. So I do want to point out that I think that now is the time when we talk about what kind of resources can we offer, and there are a lot of things that we can do to protect women journalists online as well. It starts with the conversation, but there are literally tools that we are working on to sort of equip women journalists with how to document and how to be essentially our organization. We're also working with online social media organizations like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and helping take down these threats and identifying and those kinds of things.
So yeah, absolutely. And I think two things. First, I think that's crucial to point out the fact that if women are targeted all over the place and across the globe, it's obvious that it's worth stressing and highlighting the fact that in some countries they're much more at threat than in others. And, we cannot put everyone on an equal footing for sure. And on the other hand, we'll go back to the solutions and the resources that we'll have. Just before we dive into the solutions and the call to action, I wanted to ask you if, we've seen with the... Maybe I'll switch to French for that. On a vu avec la Ligue du LOL qu'il y avait beaucoup de stéréotypes, beaucoup d'idées reçues qu'on avait sur les harceleurs, sur ce que pouvaient être les harceleurs, sur le fait que c'était sûrement des geeks mal dans leur peau, dans les caves de leurs parents qui passaient leur soirée à troller les gens sur Internet. On a aussi parfois l'idée que ça arrive surtout dans des pays qui ne sont pas démocratiques et qu'en France, mon Dieu, droits de l'homme et tout, non, jamais ça arriverait un truc pareil. Et pourtant, les journalistes parisiens avaient peut-être eu vent du fait que ce groupe existait, mais la plupart des gens sont quand même tombés des nues en découvrant qu'un petit groupe de journalistes, de journaux souvent quand même progressistes, de gauche, qui défendent en fait toutes les valeurs féministes qui ont essayé d'être mises en place ces dernières années, s'étaient retrouvés eux-mêmes dans la position de harceleurs. Et donc là, je veux dire, Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire quand on apprend ça, quoi. Donc on se rend bien compte que tout ce qu'on croyait savoir sur les harceleurs, finalement, on vient un peu à la case départ et on se dit on ne sait pas grand-chose. Ce qui prouve bien, et c'est aussi ce que disait Héloïse en introduction de la ville de Genève, qu'il y a quand même quelque chose de systémique dans le cyberharcèlement. Donc ce n'est pas seulement Internet le problème, c'est peut-être aussi la société en tant que telle et la place des femmes dans chaque domaine de la société. Donc ce que j'aimerais bien qu'on essaye de faire dans le quart d'heure qui suit, c'est de voir dans quelle mesure est-ce que Internet se fait un peu le catalyseur du pire de ce que le patriarcat a à offrir. Qu'est-ce que le cyberharcèlement, en fait, tire du côté cyber, donc du côté Internet, et qu'est-ce qu'il tire du sexisme de la société dans son ensemble, quoi. Donc peut-être pour aborder cette question, ma première question pour toi, Nadia, c'est est-ce que tu penses que le côté anonymat, le côté raid, donc harcèlement en meute, c'est quelque chose qui joue un rôle crucial dans le cyberharcèlement, ce que souvent les gens ont dit dans ce genre de débat. Ouais, mais ils harcèlent parce qu'ils sont anonymes, etc. Qu'est-ce que tu en penses, toi qui a été en première ligne?
Oui, ça fait partie effectivement des faux débats qu'on a eus. Dans un premier temps, de dire que c'était des jeunes mecs sous-éduqués, puceaux, en gros. Voilà, c'était l'image qu'on avait du cyberharceleur. Dans mon cas, moi, c'était pas du tout le cas. La semaine prochaine, j'ai encore une nouvelle audience pour un harcèlement et un texte nécrophile, pédophile, enfin plein de choses en même temps dans un texte relativement court. Et le mec est étudiant en philo. Parmi ceux qui ont été condamnés donc sur ce fameux forum 18-25, l'un avait 30 ans, il travaillait chez France Télécom, enfin bon voilà, donc voilà. Il y a eu ce faux débat là, puis le faux débat de l'anonymat. Alors en France, on a eu un énorme débat sur l'anonymat sur Internet, notamment de la part du président de la République, qui a dit qu'il fallait interdire l'anonymat ou le pseudonymat, en l'occurrence. C'est une fausse bonne idée, déjà parce que l'anonymat n'existe pas vraiment. Enfin, il n'existe pas sur Internet. On a des adresses IP, on peut retrouver les gens. En revanche, effectivement, le fait d'avancer masqué, de se créer un personnage sur Internet, et en général, de la part des virilistes, ils se créent un personnage de mec très costaud, très viril, très fort, tout ce qu'ils ne sont pas en général. Et donc ça permet, oui, de se créer son petit avatar, de ne pas montrer son visage. Voilà, ça va autoriser ces personnes-là à se construire des espèces de légendes intérieures et extérieures pour eux et pour la vie des gens. Donc la question qu'on doit se poser, c'est pas ça, c'est pas comment interdire, comment bannir les pseudos d'Internet, mais pourquoi Internet est devenu à ce point une caisse de résonance, puisque le sexisme, ça existe dans la vraie vie, des menaces de viol, on en a dans la vraie vie, mais effectivement, il y a cette espèce de grosse marmite là de forums et de réseaux sociaux qui font que les gens se coalisent entre eux. La Ligue du LOL, c'est une ligue, c'est pas inintéressant la manière dont ils sont eux-mêmes appelés. Le forum, comme le nom l'indique, c'est ceux qui m'ont attaqué, c'est une agora, donc ce sont des groupes coordonnés ou pas, spontanés ou pas, mais il y a rarement un seul cyberharceleur. Il a toujours plein de petits copains derrière lui, mais ils agissent en groupe, et c'est ce qui fait, par exemple, pour revenir encore à mon cas, c'est que les deux personnes qui ont été condamnées pour m'avoir donc menacé, menace de crime contre les personnes, menace de mort et menace de viol. À propos de cette chronique, on dit lors de l'audience qu'ils n'avaient pas écouté la chronique, mais qu'ils avaient vu leurs copains sur leur forum dire que la chronique de la féminazie, là, il fallait pas que ça passe. Et il y a une personne qui a quand même pris le temps, donc l'une des personnes qui a été condamnée, qui a pris le temps de faire un petit photomontage de moi avec le corps d'un esclave de Daesh, de l'État islamique, qui a pris le temps de faire ça, mais qui n'a pas pris le temps d'écouter ma chronique d'1 minute 30. Donc c'est ça, quand on parle de raid et de groupe, ça entraîne c'est ces effets de groupe-là d'une bêtise abyssale, c'est absurde. Moi, quand le mec a dit ça pendant le procès, on a eu envie de rire, on a ri, même la juge a ri. Et en même temps, on était désolés de réaliser à quel point le groupe pouvait mener à ça.
Ce qui est intéressant d'ailleurs, c'est que ces dernières semaines, en fait, depuis que l'histoire de la Ligue du LOL est sortie, et là je fais un petit pas de côté pour vraiment me concentrer sur la Ligue du LOL, il y a eu beaucoup de questions qui ont été posées autour de cet esprit de boys club. Donc les boys clubs, c'était en gros, et c'est toujours, des groupes d'hommes qui se réunissent entre eux, que ce soit dans des espaces physiques ou que ce soit en ligne, pour partager d'abord une forme de socialisation, se coopter entre eux, accéder à des positions de dominants. Et donc, toi, est-ce que tu dirais que Internet favorise plus que, je sais pas moi, l'espace physique, la naissance ou cette forme de coalition de boys club?
Non. Et on en a eu la preuve cette semaine. Il y a eu, à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des droits des femmes, le 8 mars, il y a une enquête qui a été publiée par un collectif de femmes qui s'appelle Prenons la Une, entre autres, et qui ont collecté des témoignages de femmes, particulièrement dans le milieu du journalisme, et qui racontaient des agressions, des menaces, des attaques dans la vraie vie, au bureau, en conférence de rédaction, dans les couloirs, voilà. Donc on n'est pas sur Internet. Là, on parle de rédacteurs en chef qui menacent de viol leurs collaboratrices. C'est arrivé. Les insultes, le sexisme, le machisme qui a été collecté, enfin les preuves qui ont été collectées dans cette enquête-là, elles montrent bien que voilà, il n'y a pas, encore une fois, il n'y a pas de monde parallèle, Internet et le bureau et la cité et la vie et les espaces où on est des vraies personnes. Non.
Ouais. Mais à ça, on peut aussi dire, finalement, quand ont été dévoilés 2 groupes privés sur Internet au sein des rédactions du Huffington Post et de Vice, donc l'une s'appelant Radio Bière Foot. Voilà. Brillant. L'autre, je ne sais plus. Et dans les 2 cas, en fait, c'était des groupes exclusivement masculins, de collaborateurs voilà, du journal. Donc quand même, Vice, je ne sais pas si tout le monde connaît, mais c'est un pure player, donc un média en ligne qui se veut là aussi très jeune, très progressiste, etc. Un peu comme Slate d'ailleurs. Et puis le Huffington Post, c'est voilà, même genre de ligne éditoriale. Dans les 2 cas, on avait quand même des groupes qui se réunissaient spécifiquement sur des messageries privées de leur rédaction pour humilier les femmes de leur entourage, alors que dans l'espace de la rédaction, ils se montraient relativement moins odieux, disons, que sur cet espace de discussion. Il y a eu d'ailleurs à ce sujet un post sur Medium assez dingue d'une des journalistes, je crois que c'était de Vice, mais j'ai un petit doute là, faudrait vérifier, mais qui racontait comment elle tombait des nues parce qu'il y avait un journaliste notamment dont elle a appris plus tard qui faisait partie de ce groupe de discussion en ligne hyper raciste. Elle était d'origine asiatique. Et qui disait, mais en gros, je comprends pas, moi dans la rédaction, c'était un de mes amis. Et j'ai appris après capture d'écran à l'appui que en fait c'était le pire des misogynes dans ce groupe, et je vous passe les propos parce que vraiment ils méritent pas d'être relayés. Mais voilà, est-ce que quand même il n'y a pas ce côté on se retrouve dans un entre-soi qu'on n'a pas forcément la possibilité d'avoir en 2019 dans l'espace physique?
Ouais, peut-être. Ce qui est intéressant avec ces groupes-là, qui c'était effectivement des groupes de discussion privés au sein des rédactions, des Slack, etc., c'est que dans des rédactions différentes, ça a commencé de la même manière. Ce sont des groupes qui se sont créés pour commenter les journalistes femmes, commenter le corps des femmes et commenter leur travail. Voilà, ouais, j'ai l'impression à chaque fois, quand je me rappelle effectivement du contenu de ces groupes-là, on peut le dire, là, ils avaient surnommé une journaliste d'origine asiatique Kim Jong-un, et ça les faisait vraiment beaucoup, beaucoup rire. Mais voilà, ils se sont coalisés dans un premier temps pour commenter le corps et le travail des journalistes femmes, et ça a fini après en cyberharcèlement ou en harcèlement, mais effectivement qui se passait pas dans les bureaux. Mais quand les femmes sont tombées sur ces discussions-là où elles se faisaient traiter de tous les noms, elles ont réalisé que ça commençait comme ça. Ouais. Le petit commentaire le matin sur la tenue, ou elles trouvaient ça pas très grave. Et en fait, c'est comme ça que ça a commencé. par le fait de commenter systématiquement l'attitude des femmes, et le fait de dire est-ce qu'elles doivent avoir ses règles. Enfin, c'est le type de commentaire qu'il y avait sur ces fils de discussion. Donc certes, ils ne le faisaient pas à voix haute en conférence de rédaction ou en réunion dans les rédactions, et heureusement que non, mais ça ne change rien en fait. Pour les victimes, ça ne change rien. C'est-à-dire que la fille, elle s'en fiche de s'être faite traiter de dictateur nord-coréen parce qu'elle est asiatique sur un fil de discussion ou dans une rédaction, le résultat est le même.
Ouais, on a du chemin. Est-ce que toi, Arzu, would you mind to weigh in on the anonymity debate? I think that you have told me that your harassers actually were people you knew, well, not personally, but you knew who they were. So anonymity didn't really play such a huge role.
Yes, in my case it didn't, because I went and looked up their profiles, and I've looked up that some of them are teachers, or they have other jobs, or they have families, and they have pictures of their family members on Facebook, including the man who sent me the death threat. Like, I went and studied his Facebook profile just to be sure who I was harassed by, I suppose. And what I did, which is something that I haven't done. I mean, one thing that I did was document, and then I wrote about this online harassment. I did a story in 2016 about government-sponsored harassment, and I've actually used a lot of the threads, and I went and I tracked them. I found out that some of them are actually youth members of the ruling party. I have a friend who sent me pictures of Azerbaijani version of troll army, like a house where these young people are working every day. They have T-shirts, they have logos. It's pretty impressive how much money that's been spent into this. And these are the same people who go after other journalists and rights defenders and activists. They do this all the time on Facebook, especially around political events. It's a thing. Like it's an employment, first of all, for them. That's where they make their salaries. I suppose not much, but still. And when you track down, one of the things that I noticed in the screenshots that I was taking was that a lot of the messages were the same. And then I realized, I started thinking, where are they taking these messages from? So I started Googling them, and I found out that all of these messages were either coming from the statements of the president or some other government official or a newspaper. They were just, it was like, I think they also had some document with all these quotes that they were supposed to use, and that's what they were doing. That's one thing. Second thing that I did, which I haven't done, and I think which took me some time to think about, was to actually write back to the people who sent me those messages. I was working on a story recently, and I was asked to share my experience of this online harassment. And I was like, well, I've written about this so many times. I want to do something different this time. And so I went through those messages that I received at the time, and I picked, I think I picked 10 maybe more of like the ones that I thought were really, really aggressive, and the language was really strong. And I wrote to them. I reached out to them because I knew them on Facebook. I wasn't friends with them on Facebook, but I could send a message.
But you knew who they were. You knew their faces.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote to them, and I took the quote of what they've written to me at the time. I put it into the message, and I said, hi, I was wondering if you could share and tell me now why you wrote this 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. What was your intention? Do you know anything about the work that I do? And out of those 10, and by the way, there were also women among the people who were sending me those messages and writing about me. It wasn't just men. So I wrote, there were, I think, 2 women that I wrote to as well. And only one person apologized. Everyone else reconfirmed that they were absolutely, they were staying basically true to what they wrote to me and how they perceive me. And they didn't care, whether or not it was true. And that was quite an interesting discovery, I guess, for me. So I, of course, included that in the story. And I think it also made me realize that, we spend so much time trying to prove, trying to find evidence, whether it's investigative stories or anything else. And yet, no matter how much truth we try to put out, there will always be a group or some percentage of people who are not going to believe it anyway, no matter what you do. And that was one other, I guess, realization that kind of hit me after that experience.
Thank you. Would you say, Kiran, that the internet is to blame more specifically in terms of cyber harassment because of anonymity, because of the possibility of raids?
Oh, all right. We're back. Okay. So I think that, like I mentioned earlier, that, it's online spaces are essentially the spaces where you get to do the things that you can't do offline. One of the references is I did get to speak to one of a person who trolls professionally, gets paid for it. Works for different countries, gets paid by different countries, whoever wants to hire him for freelancers, and is in touch with the community of other trolls. They also organize bots and all kinds of stuff, like they basically manage everything. They do sometimes make a lot of money depending on who's paying them, and so they really, if there is a political time in a specific place, it's like a good time for them to make money, because like they get more freelance projects. So I will just share a little bit about what he told me about how they work and the community. One of the things, like you said, Nadia, is that for them, it's not emotional. It's basically like a bunch of young boys, I would say, taking the liberty of, just having fun at a football game. And you could do whatever. You could say whatever you want to and not think about consequences. So he did describe, like, his opinion was that, we just go online. The best thing, he said, was that you have anonymity. So no one can see you. You can keep changing your name. If someone shuts you down, like your account is taken down, you can have a new account. So there's a lot of liberty to be online and to be anonymous. And the second thing is that if it's more organized and you're working with your other group of friends, you do have a chorus, and you can maintain that. So it becomes, like, what I understood from that conversation was that it becomes enjoyable. It's like a bunch of friends having beer and like chatting about things that they like to chat about, like things like that. So it becomes like a community, sort of, a gathering online. We're attacking this person, that person, etc. And then there are a bunch of things that he said which were like really horrifying, like how they described, like how they took liberty in describing, the target and why it didn't matter to them. Like it includes like, sex, sexual comments and, rape threats and death threats and all that stuff, and attacks on families and other things. But also that I asked him that, like I was kind of horrified because like this is at a time when like after a year I had been documenting this with other women journalists in different parts of the world, and I was like horrified. I think I was shaking by the time he was talking to me because he was completely normal, describing these, the way they formulate, draft these attacks. So I asked him, do you know the consequences? Because I know women journalists who have gone offline, have lost their jobs, are not interested in working, lost motivation to work. It affects them in their physical lives, in their everyday lives, in their careers, and what they become as people after. To a lot of women journalists, and some, most of us are resilient, and sometimes we're just human, So he basically said something, he laughed, and he said that you guys shouldn't take it so seriously. And what I got from that was that it is a reflection of responsibility that, men have, in society. I mean, my understanding and interpretation of a lot of these conversations is like, it really reflects how, what misogyny is and why these attacks take place, and then how I think at times that a lot of these are men. They do, take out their aggression against women and their opinions about women and what they think about women through these attacks. And it's a way of them to express themselves and feel good about themselves. One more thing, I did ask him how many women work with you guys, and he said, we know one woman, and she works in a good position, but she keeps on trying to steal our projects and throw in her feminism in there, that she's a woman and all that stuff, and we don't like that. And so most of the boys do not like the woman in the group, and they just don't want her to get the jobs. So I think that there is definitely there's no doubt that there is a sense of misogyny in that community, and I think that anyone who wants to, say, hire a group of people to do this kind of work, which is becoming very common in most countries around the world, where you want to stifle the press, I think that we need to start having this conversation and talk about this more openly, like with more awareness that this is about gender and that people can take liberty.
It's actually interesting because you were mentioning the fact that you have the people who harass and you have also the people who minimize and don't do anything. And so to me, what's interesting right now is the fact that cyber harassment is about noise. So it's about the harassment, but it's also about silence and the people who do not necessarily blame, who do not choose to participate, men also, who could weigh in on that debate, but choose not to really interfere. I have quite a provocative question actually for you, for the three of you. Would you say that maybe at times you yourself could have supported a victim of cyber harassment, or could have said something and ended up, for your own reasons, not really waiting on that debate, or didn't really, I don't know, support, so the victim of the cyber harassment? I think right now, and that's what's interesting with the League of LOL too, we all have to sort of look at our own actions, how we laughed at these jokes, and how, we sort of, gave handshakes or, hugs to people who actually were part of that very system. Would you say that sometimes you, looking back, didn't have the right behavior?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Because at the end of the day, when women journalists are attacked, or anyone really, a journalist is attacked, since we're talking about online harassment, when women journalists are attacked online, one thing that you really need is support.
Right.
And one of the things that we do, like it's a thing that we've been doing for the last year, that we figured out, was that we wanted, the immediate thing you want to do is like to offer support and try to counter those voices, not by attacking them and trolling them back, et cetera, but just like supporting in whatever, whatever kind of support you can. We do press releases, and then sometimes we get a community of other women journalists to go online and condemn the attacks. And also sometimes we do fake news, like we basically do like this is incorrect and all that. So disqualifying the facts that are being said about a woman. Like traitor is something that's very common, or those kind of things. So it's very important to do online support and to have a support system from organizations and community, and it differs from place to place. Again, goes back to the culture and how threatened journalists feel in that country. And so the reason this is an excellent question is that we have seen this time and time again, that sometimes women journalists, when we are trying to organize these counter strategies, it depends where we are trying to do it. And if you're, say, doing it in India, which is very, like, trolling is very common over there, every other day we're writing a press release or something, every other week. And over there, it's very easy to organize people and, like, go online. But if it's something that's happening in Pakistan, which is a neighboring country, or in Libya or Egypt, women or journalists or friends definitely would not want to go online and be seen participating you know, as anyone who's even related sometimes, because these attacks are serious. So in some places in the world, you know they're coming from the state or whoever wants to silence you. So you know that they're not just a bunch of people who are aggressive. So if you know that you know who is the source of the attacks, then people, it sort of varies how much people want to participate. And one more thing is that even in countries where women want to get together and like support each other, we get tired,
Right.
you know, and so happens with me all the time too. I mean, I have to do it because it's my job now, you know, but like, it's like when we are organizing these things, we say, okay, well, last week we were doing this campaign, and this week this has happened again, and like, I haven't slept for like, you know, 5 days, and
Pick
and
your
then
battles,
it really
basically.
comes down to that.
Yeah.
And then it's also, it's like being tired, it's being getting used to it, and then also just kind of losing hope on and off, which happens in our community when we are trying to,
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say, Arzu?
I think everything boils down to your personal approach to this. I mean, if you tell yourself that A, I'm not going to be threatened by this anymore, B, I'm going to talk about this and not going to be quiet, and C, you know, I'm going to support everyone else who's going through this and recommend to take the very same steps rather than being stuck in that dark place, as I mentioned in the film. We also need to acknowledge the fact that there are far more women journalists talking about this than, you know, when I first started, even potentially thinking that maybe I should talk about this and write about this. And I think I've had a few instances when my colleagues have approached me asking me if I could speak to someone who's going through something like that, something very similar to what, you know, we've been through, and whether I could, you know, just provide the support or give some tips or just hear that person out. And I've had these really wonderful conversations with these really brave women journalists who would tell me, and I would hear my story is just in a different context, in a different country, by different people, but it's exactly the same thing. And I would just say that, you know, this is what it is. You're going to continue facing it. It's not going to end. I'm not going to tell you that this is just a phase. It might stop in a few months. It might not stop for in few months, but you have to be prepared. And as Karen mentioned, you have to have a support network. You have to have people like, you know, myself or other organizations who will be able to stand there for you, and basically, you know, be there for you when you feel like that's it. You don't want to be part of this anymore. So yeah, there are, I guess, like multiple levels: acknowledging, talking, providing the support, and not being quiet about it.
And listening.
And listening, yeah.
Et toi, Nadia, est-ce que tu dirais aussi que, je sais pas, avec cette histoire de la Ligue du LOL, on a tous été amenés à faire notre propre introspection de la façon dont nous-mêmes, on a parfois contribué en riant aux blagues ou en retweetant certains trucs un peu limites, et qu'on prend conscience aujourd'hui de ce qui se passe?
On ne l'a pas tous fait, justement. Moi, j'ai entendu beaucoup et lu beaucoup de journalistes dire mais moi, si j'avais été témoin de ça, mais je serais intervenue, ou enfin voilà, avec toujours ces postures de chevalier blanc, et qui n'ont pas du tout fait ce travail-là, et même cette forme de spéléologie. Peut-être qu'il faut aller voir, fouiller sur son compte Twitter, remonter un peu dans ses archives, voir comment on s'est soi-même comporté. Je parle aussi pour moi, hein. J'ai beau avoir été cyberharcelée, j'ai cyberharcelé personne, mais j'ai pas été peut-être la personne la plus exemplaire non plus sur les réseaux sociaux. Moi aussi, voilà. Et il faut avoir peut-être l'honnêteté de se le dire. Et c'est pas facile, hein, mais l'une des raisons pour lesquelles j'ai quitté Twitter et Facebook, c'est pas que pour mon hygiène mentale, c'est aussi parce que le format, le fait que ça produit ça encourage ça encourage à être dans la réaction immédiate, à être dans la petite phrase, évidemment, dans le commentaire. Et je sais, moi, en tant que journaliste, que j'ai commenté le travail de consoeurs ou de confrères pas toujours de manière très intelligente, voilà, mais en 140 signes, de manière un peu lapidaire, pas sympathique, pas structurée, sans que ça ait aucun intérêt. Donc effectivement, il faut qu'on fasse tous, journalistes et non journalistes, ce travail-là, de voir comment est-ce qu'on se comporte, pas seulement en tant qu'acteur du numérique, avec son compte Twitter, mais aussi en tant que spectateur. Et évidemment, oui, le fait d'être témoin d'une entreprise de cyberharcèlement et de ne pas réagir, en tout cas de ne pas envoyer par exemple un petit mot à la personne qui est cyberharcelée, c'est hyper important. De ne pas même intervenir, tenter d'intervenir pour que ça cesse. Ça fait de nous des complices, oui, quand on fait ça.
Ouais, d'ailleurs, c'est toujours utile aussi pour les gens qui sont encore là, qui ne sont pas encore partis manger. C'est une des choses qui sont quand même vraiment revenues dans le débat à la lumière de la Ligue du LOL, c'est ce qu'on peut faire en fait, l'action, même quand on est juste sur Twitter comme ça et qu'on n'est ni journaliste, ni harcelé, ni quoi que ce soit, mais qu'on assiste en fait à ces sortes de joutes verbales, quand on voit quand on voit des témoignages de victimes qui font l'effort et qui ont le courage de venir 10 ans plus tard dire en fait moi il m'est arrivé ça, et qu'on le lit, et ça les aide vachement en fait de commenter bravo, même si c'est 2 mots. Moi j'avais pas conscience de ça en fait avant que les victimes le disent, que ça fait une énorme différence en fait quand on est cyberharcelé d'avoir le soutien du public, quoi, tout simplement.
Parce que le but du cyberharcèlement, c'est d'isoler la personne. Donc il faut bien, en tant que spectateur de ça, la sortir de cet isolement-là.
Ouais. Pour terminer, je sais qu'on n'a plus énormément de temps, mais toujours pour parler de l'action et de ce qu'on peut faire, il y a pas mal de questions qui se posent. La première, c'est quand même celle de la loi. Enfin, que peut la loi face à toutes ces questions de cyberharcèlement ? Je précise rapidos qu'en France, il y a quand même une volonté actuellement de remettre cette question sur le devant de la scène. Donc depuis 2018, il y a une disposition qui permet de poursuivre le harcèlement en meute, donc les raids dont on parlait. Le harcèlement simple, qu'il ait lieu dans le cadre du travail ou pas, il est punissable de 2 ans de prison, 30 000 € d'amende. C'est quand même une priorité affichée du gouvernement. En Suisse, en revanche, c'est pas un délit. Donc il y a certaines dispositions qui permettent de porter plainte, mais il faut quand même savoir que dans le cadre légal qui s'applique actuellement, il faut que la victime puisse démontrer, certificat médical à l'appui, les effets du harcèlement sur l'intégrité physique et morale. Donc il y a quand même beaucoup de boulot de ce point de vue-là. Peut-être que Kiran, tu peux nous dire un petit peu toi ce que tu penses que peut la loi et les différents cas de figure en fait que toi tu as vu de ce qui fonctionne, de ce qui fonctionne pas, pour qu'on arrive enfin à porter plainte dans ces cas-là et que on soit entendu par les gouvernements.
All right, I'm gonna move back to English. I think I understood some of your questions. My French is really bad. I just know how to say bonjour.
That's a start.
So, yeah, definitely. I think that, first of all, I would say, in the landscape of, all of the, in the map of the world, when you look at laws, internet is not that new, but it's kind of new when it comes to law. We don't have sufficient laws in most parts of the world. But where there are laws, they're not used efficiently. So we know that in some countries where you have laws that can protect women journalists or, online harassment, for example, those laws are not used and they're maneuvered. Like we have examples, like actually in Pakistan in the last few years, online activists who have gone, digital activists have gone online and have gone and sort of worked with parliamentarians in some countries, Pakistan, India, a bunch of others. I think Arzu might know, she's really involved in this circle. But there are some countries where activists have been lobbying with parliamentarians or people in the government and trying to create systems where you could bring in more on protection for people who are targeted online. But in most of these places, we have not seen any kind of advantage or action taken where these laws are applied, or women journalists can actually go and even when you can sue the government, in most parts of the world, people are really discouraged to do that, even when they can. And in some parts of the world, there's so many examples in my head right now that, it's a long list. But in some places, women journalists have tried suing the government, but they haven't had enough support. Finding lawyers, these kind of things are different,
and
difficult.
It's expensive, I'm sure.
It's super expensive. We've been trying to help in some cases, and we might go in debt. But it's very expensive, so that's another resource issue. But say in Southeast Asia, recently in the last 1 year, but a few months, it's gotten the case Maria Ressa of Rappler, if some of you know about her, has been attacked by her government constantly, and there's a case that the government has on her. And they arrested her, and then she was released on bail, paid like $2,000, something like that. And that is something that happens. So in countries like in Pakistan, there are laws, but they're ignored. So in places where there are laws, they cannot be utilized, because it does go back to how strong women journalists are, how much we know about what's going on, and who's willing to lobby for them. It is attacking women journalists or attacking journalists generally, but attacks is a power game. And for women journalists to be strong and safe online or offline, it really goes back to how much power they have in their countries and then internationally. And the correspondence can always be helpful. I would like to say that it is very, very important for international community to lobby for having better laws and updated laws that really look into what are the things, nuances, and what are the habits being adopted online by people. Sometimes these attacks are organized, obviously, but they're also precarious. They sort of empower an online user to take things into their hands and harass someone online. And I think there should be laws that can be, adopted in different parts.
Especially because, as we've just seen in the documentary, it is a threat to democracy. So hence, it's really, there is no good reason not to act.
Absolutely. And all these women journalists who go back online and every day, whether they go offline or not, they continue to do their work, because, I've spoken to so many, like hundreds of women journalists who would always say that, yes, I will go back to do my work, because at the end of the day, I faced trauma, I was harassed, I've lost opportunities, people don't want to be around me, et cetera, depending on where you are. But then they do go back to do your job, because when you're a journalist, you know that you have a responsibility. It's public service that you do every day. And journalists do tend to go back to do their work, and they do it in difficult conditions is something that we need to work on, as a community.
Un aspect positif quand même sur cette fin de débat. Donc toi, Nadia, t'as porté plainte. Tu as créé, au travers d'un procès relativement médiatisé aussi, un précédent assez fort. Est-ce que tu peux nous en dire 2 mots ?
Oui, j'ai porté plainte très vite, encouragée par mon employeur de l'époque, qui était donc la radio Europe 1. C'est-à-dire qu'ils m'ont prise physiquement par la main pour m'emmener au commissariat, parce que j'étais encore dans ce que je décrivais tout à l'heure, de dire mais non, ça va s'arrêter, c'est pas grave, tout va bien se passer. Et eux m'ont dit non, c'est très grave ce qui est en train de se passer. Et en plus, ils pouvaient eux-mêmes porter plainte conjointement, puisque plusieurs messages m'annonçaient qu'ils allaient venir devant les studios d'Europe 1 pour m'égorger. Donc ils ont pu, eux, s'associer à la plainte. Et surtout, ils ont fait ce qui a permis ce procès, c'est qu'ils ont payé mes frais d'avocat. Moi seule, j'aurais certainement pas pu. Ils continuent à payer encore, ce sont des affaires qui ressortent régulièrement. Et donc oui, il y a une condamnation, il y a eu 3 condamnations en tout, 2 personnes qui ont été condamnées à 6 mois de prison avec sursis et 2 000 € d'amende, et une 3e très maligne qui a eu l'intelligence le jour de l'audience de poster un message pour dire les mecs, j'ai une voiture, j'ai un couteau, j'arrive, qui est-ce qui vient avec moi pour l'attendre à la sortie du tribunal ? Il a été cueilli le lendemain matin à 6 h chez lui, sa maman était contente. Donc lui a été condamné. l'argent n'est pas versé, parce que j'ai beaucoup lu, par exemple, que je m'étais acheté une piscine, évidemment, avec, avec tout ce que j'avais gagné.
Ou que ça t'avait servi de publicité.
Voilà, et alors que, évidemment, que ça allait m'ouvrir les portes des studios télé, de tout ça. Alors non, pas du tout, ça m'en a même plutôt fermé. Ça m'a rapporté absolument aucun argent, parce que ces personnes-là, en général, elles se débrouillent pour se dire insolvables, etc. Donc, et ça coûte de l'argent malgré tout, même avec cette prise en charge par Europe 1 de mes frais d'avocat, ça a coûté de l'argent. Alors, un truc positif, oui, mais je vais recasser l'ambiance une dernière fois. C'est que oui, c'est vachement bien de porter plainte. Enfin, courageux, je ne dis pas ça pour moi, mais de manière générale, quand on porte plainte pour viol, pour menace de viol, c'est courageux parce que c'est pas facile d'aller dans un commissariat et de raconter tout ça. Alors, en plus, ils n'ont pas toujours les outils techniques. C'est-à-dire que moi, là, quand j'ai porté plainte, il a fallu que j'aille derrière le bureau de la dame au commissariat pour lui expliquer comment faire espace sur la touche.
Donc Twitter, j'imagine que c'était pas tout
voilà. Alors donc Twitter, c'était encore. Mais voilà, donc c'est chouette de pouvoir faire ça. En revanche, ce qu'il faut savoir quand on porte plainte et et qu'on espère avoir des procès, c'est que le temps de la justice, c'est pas du tout le temps d'Internet. Au bout d'un moment, le cyberharcèlement, ça s'arrête. Enfin, moi, ça s'est arrêté avant les condamnations, alors que le temps de la justice est plus long, et ça veut dire que on va se remettre. Moi, je m'étais remise de ces histoires-là. Et les convocations au tribunal, la médiatisation de l'affaire, ça me remettait systématiquement le nez dedans. Donc on ne peut jamais dire « ok, il m'arrivait ça et c'est derrière moi », puisqu'on est sans cesse rappelé à ça, et ça c'est un peu compliqué. Et puis quand on est journaliste, il y a un truc qui est assez compliqué, assez douloureux, c'est de lire, moi quand je lis l'affaire Nadia Dam ou le cas Nadia Dam, ça me pose un problème parce que je suis journaliste, j'ai envie d'en sortir des affaires ou d'écrire sur des affaires, pas d'en être une. Donc c'est un peu bizarre de voir d'être interviewé par des consoeurs ou des confrères sur ce sujet-là. Et on n'a pas du tout envie d'avoir une identité de victime. Je n'ai pas du tout envie de faire carrière dans le cyberharcèlement vécu. Donc, voilà, il faut quand même avoir tout ça en tête quand on engage des poursuites et tout ça. Mais c'est vrai que les voir au tribunal, voir leur tête de con, parce qu'ils sont quand même des têtes de cons, et de les voir comme ça, se tordre les mains, dire qu'ils sont désolés, qu'ils regrettent, ils n'en pensent rien, hein, mais c'est...
Mais ce qu'on peut noter quand même... c'est que non seulement t'en tires rien, mais méga big up quand même pour y être allé, parce que tu me disais tout à l'heure que ça a quand même ouvert la voie à d'autres qui, après toi, ont porté plainte. Et puis l'autre truc qu'on peut dire aussi, c'est que ça note quand même l'importance du média, quoi. Enfin, je veux dire, le fait que Europe 1 te dise attention, en fait, ça, c'est du harcèlement et il faut que tu portes plainte. Je pense que c'est aussi une bonne leçon pour tous les patrons de presse qui sont dans cette salle ou qui nous écoutent. La newsroom, elle a un énorme impact sur cette prise en charge aussi, et c'est pas seulement la responsabilité d'un journaliste. C'est ce que disait notamment une personne dans le documentaire. C'est pas si un journaliste est attaqué, le journal est attaqué, la rédaction, la radio, la chaîne de télé est attaquée, et ça, c'est hyper important. On a plus le temps, c'est fini. Ok. Alors, eh bien, j'avais d'autres questions, mais pardon. Est-ce que vous avez des questions dans le public ? On peut prendre quelques questions dans le public ? Célia ? Ouais. Oui. Questions du public ? Oui. On arrive avec un micro juste derrière vous, sur votre droite.
Merci d'avoir organisé ce débat. Je suis un journaliste, je suis catastrophé. Je n'avais jamais croisé les écoles de journalistes ou les différentes rédactions où j'étais, du local à des hebdomadaires, à ce qui a été décrit dans ce très bon film. Je remercie encore ceux qui ont osé le financer et celui qui l'a réalisé. La question, elle est simplement à Arzu, si j'ose lui poser comme ça, et à Kiran. Est-ce que le régime politique de son pays... Je me demande d'ailleurs si le bonhomme qui était sur l'image n'était pas de la même famille qui règne depuis quelque temps. Est-ce que ce régime sévère peut calmer le jeu pour les harcèlements sexuels ou rédactionnels, ou au contraire, c'est comme partout? Je pourrais transposer la même question à Madame Kiran aussi, pour dire, est-ce que son régime, qui est devenu un peu moins dictatorial, protégerait mieux ces femmes journalistes dans les rédactions. J'ai rencontré au Pakistan des juges, une gouverneure, 2 rédactrices en chef extraordinaires. Et on ne se rend pas assez compte ici à quel point ces femmes sont courageuses. Alors la question, c'est ces 2 régimes. Et puis la question pour vous, la modératrice peut-être, est-ce qu'avec le cinglé qui est à Washington, qui respecte si peu les femmes et les rédactions, on n'est pas parti vers la tempête, vers le mauvais temps?
Très bonne question. Je vous laisse répondre. À vous l'honneur.
I mean, well, the man holding me in the picture was the president of Armenia, and they were using it as a way to show me as a traitor that I was, working for the Armenian government and representing it. Of course, I mean, the way my country and the defamation case has come, it's because of this work I was doing for the Turkish Armenian newspaper. So the fact that I was writing for this Turkish Armenian newspaper was used as an excuse. It wasn't. It was very political. They were not very happy with the way I was writing for international media. They were not really happy with the way I was presenting Azerbaijan at conferences, the way I was speaking about the human rights record, about the press freedom record, the way I was referring to the cases of political prisoners. And it was a really perfect excuse for them to come after me. And had the regime been different, maybe this would have not happened. But that being said, I mean, I know a lot of people in the opposition who think exactly the same. So had it not been President Aliyev or his government in power, and it been a different kind of government, there are no guarantees that I would not have gotten the same treatment as I did this time, precisely because of this conflict and the way it's portrayed. People don't talk about conflict-sensitive journalism. People don't talk about peace. I mean, there's such a small community of civil society that actually does talk about conflict resolution and peaceful coexistence between the 2 countries, that when you do, like I did, it becomes immediately some sort of I don't even know how to what kind of word to use to describe it. It's news that look, an Azerbaijani is working for an Armenian newspaper, and they did the same before. I was working as a facilitator and a co-director of a small not-for-profit organization that worked between the communities in Armenia and Azerbaijan, and I did it for years. And the reason why I took on the job at Agos, at the Turkish Armenian newspaper, was precisely because of this job, where I worked with journalists, where I worked with civil society, and I really believe that there is a need to change people's mindsets. And the way you do it, you either you tackle education, and you reach out to people. And since I wasn't in education, but I had access to reaching out to people, I thought maybe this would be an opportunity. But to answer your question, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. Yeah.
I think that I would say that, thank you for your question. And yes, in Pakistan, if you would talk about Pakistan, I would say that it's a good example, because this is the example I was thinking about when I said that it really depends on how much you are able to have the community come together for you when an attack takes place. So Pakistan is a good example where, because a lot of these attacks do take place either sometimes by political parties, they're organized by them, specific political parties, but most of the time these attacks take place by the intelligence agencies who are trying to silence the media, which is something, a tradition that has gone on for decades. But in the online, since the internet, it has the state has been very successful in controlling the media, because you can immediately go online and attack journalists, and they have been able to, I think that how much Pakistan is silenced now is much, much more. In fact, when I go back, sometimes I've worked on, I used to be a war correspondent and post 9/11, I covered that. And I go back and I look at and talk to journalists. The journalists know everything kind of that's happening online, but you would never see it in the news. There are entire stories for many, many years that are absolutely off the internet, off the television, and no one talks about it and the public doesn't know, and it absolutely has changed how much control the state has over people. So I would say that, like, I think that, yes, like I said before, it is all about power, like who has the power. So the state sometimes laughs at you if you're a journalist, is, do you have the power or do I have the power? And it's really about that. So which is why I think that, imagine if you are a woman journalist and you have your face on a nude photo going online in a Muslim country, and your dad sees it. It's horrible. And sometimes, you know, it's something that a lot of women journalists cannot handle, and they lose social contact with, you know, with their group of friends and all that stuff, and they lose support as well. So it feels like, you know, your tank is emptied. So I think that it's important that support system work, and then in places where support systems can work, people can chime in and try to support or like counter these online attacks. You can fill that power back in and you know, try to regain your control over the situation. I don't think we're near it at all. I think that we're still talking about what happens online, and we're trying to understand and really processing it, because it is so traumatizing every time an audience hears what's going on, or people who are trying to help, or journalists themselves hear each other's stories. It is very demotivating and traumatizing, and we think we cannot do anything about it, but actually there are a lot of things that can be done, and there are lots of ways that we can counter that. And I think a lot of that is a responsibility of organizations that are there, and communities, and journalists who work together to be able to support each other and organize themselves in a powerful way to, you know, sort of get back to whoever is trying to silence you.
Et pour répondre à votre question rapidement, est-ce que ça fait peur d'avoir quelqu'un comme Trump à la tête d'un pays comme les États-Unis? Bien sûr. Est-ce que ça fait peur d'avoir quelqu'un comme Bolsonaro à la tête d'un pays comme le Brésil? Bien sûr. Néanmoins, je reste assez optimiste quand je vois que, ben voilà, la Ligue du LOL, on a vu qu'il y avait eu des mises à pied, on a vu qu'il y a des conséquences, on a vu l'ampleur que le débat prend, on voit qu'il y a du monde ici qui assiste à ce débat, que la thématique du sexisme, de l'égalité, commence à gagner du terrain et à sortir de niches intellectuelles, de penseuses, penseurs qui avaient réfléchi à la question du féminisme et de l'égalité. Donc voilà, j'ai l'impression qu'il y a quand même quelques raisons d'être optimiste, et je choisis de l'être. Merci. Il y a une autre question ici, si jamais, et ici aussi. Ah, pardon, vous avez déjà le micro.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing this. I know that it's not pleasurable, so thank you very much for sharing and for fighting. My question is something that you already mentioned, but you said maybe is that online people coordinate better and is easier to attack women. But I was surprised about the Ligue du LOL and so on, and I start asking me, what if being online help us to understand and track the people and see that there's a lobby? What if the lobby was already there? What if the women journalists that are so few in
newsrooms and
yes, is because there is an existing lobby against them, not only online.
So, in other words, did this whole scandal help the society as a whole understand how much sexism was already existing in this professional branch?
Yes, not only because I'm a journalist too,
yeah.
And I always thought that the harassment I had was singular, that was not a connection. And I think many women thinks of that. We are used to harassment, but we think it's that person. But Ligue du LOL exposed the fact that there was a coalition. And yes, maybe because there was a WhatsApp group and this made it easy. But what about if in the newsrooms there are men that create groups against women, and this helps the fact that we are so unpaid, so few, and so on. Thank you.
What do you think?
Actually, I would, yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a possibility that they're organized, and that people with personal connections do take things in their hands. It is quite scary. Actually, I personally faced something recently in Turkey, where I'm based these days because I'm working on a book. I know someone who did not like something that I had said, and he harassed me in a way that made me, if you're a terrorist in Turkey and you're a foreigner, then, you'll be deported, you could be imprisoned, etc., etc. And I'm not going to go into the detail of the events. It was like really tedious, went on for weeks, includes everything between handling the police and the police pretending to help, etc., to the legal system and all that stuff, to really me leaving the country in an emergency. And this is something that does happen. We don't know how much it happens because we don't know a way to document this. We don't know every journalist who's attacked in that way. And a lot of times, majority of times, I know that we've been documenting cases, and a lot of organizations are working on surveys and trying to find data. And there are at least 5 organizations that are currently looking at women journalists and online attacks and other kinds of attacks. But these surveys don't have access to every journalist. And a lot of times, what I have learned in the last few years of forming the organization is that we would always miss out stories of women journalists who think they don't have resources and who think they cannot tell anybody, or who think that there are these resources but nothing can be done, so they just don't report these cases. So we don't know the landscape of how often this happens, but it definitely is something. It's an opportunity, online space, like we spoke about it. It's online, you're anonymous, and you're very powerful. So whatever you can do with it, you're going to do it. Which is why it's important to empower women journalists and give them tools that can help. Really quickly, we are working with an organization. It's just an example. We're starting a pioneering tool for women journalists, which would be an app that women journalists anywhere in the world can download and use on their phones. And every time they're attacked online, they can report an attack, and they'll be able to document the attack. And then there are other things that you can do. We have tutorials and things like that. Through the app, we're working with an American university on creating this app. So hopefully we'll be able to help women journalists at least document what's going on and get a sense of what's really happening over there, because sometimes surveys don't reach everybody.
Est-ce qu'il y avait une autre question? Et ensuite, nous devrons nous en aller. On m'a dit une question. Il y a des micros dans la salle? Sinon, allez-y comme ça. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un d'autre qui a demandé la parole derrière? Bon.
C'est pour parler de solidarité, justement. Solidarité en 2 mots. Est-ce que vous, dans le cadre des affaires qui vous concernent, vous avez eu le soutien d'hommes, notamment de vos collègues journalistes masculins? Et l'autre question, c'est adressée aux réalisateurs du film. Vous avez parlé de l'Europe, des États-Unis. Est-ce que vous pensez peut-être prochaine fois faire la même chose pour l'Afrique ou d'autres continents? Je vous remercie.
Merci pour la question.
Ouais, je peux répondre sur la solidarité masculine, parce que oui, elle existe. Mais effectivement, oui, j'ai été soutenue par beaucoup d'hommes, journalistes ou non, et un ami journaliste en particulier qui avait écrit une tribune, un appel à me soutenir, et qui avait été publié dans la presse avec une pétition avec beaucoup de signatures, ce qui malheureusement avait alimenté le complotisme du de toute façon les journalistes ils sont tous l'entre-soi, etc. Des gens qui sont amusés à chercher tous les non-juifs dans les pétitionnaires, mais voilà. Mais oui, effectivement, bien sûr que il y a des hommes solidaires, des femmes, heureusement, nom de Dieu.
Et pour la question au réalisateur, est-ce qu'il y a un micro? Sinon, moi, je donne le mien.
Thank you. Well, that's actually a very good question. Yes, we want to do something as an organization, as the International Press Institute, and we're actually looking towards getting some funding to develop the project that we've been working for 5 years now, consistently called On the Line, together also with the OSCE in sociaux, in 2 countries, which is Nigeria and Kenya, which is pretty much among the countries where mobile penetration and internet penetration it's quite high, because most of this harassment and comes through social media, as we've already spoken. One of the, just quickly, since I have the microphone.
Very quickly, because we have to go soon.
But one of the things, there are many things that we can discuss later on having dinner, but one of the things that I really wanted to point out, and also this is something that together with Jennifer, when we started filming, was something that we really wanted to stress, is that we didn't want to portray the journalists as victims.
Yeah.
That's really important. I have this motto, or that motto followed me throughout the whole documentary, which was, neither victims nor heroes, just targets. Because when a woman journalist is forced, in their country to heroic actions to be able to do, her job, then it talks very poorly about the quality of democracy and the support of the government and newsrooms and social media platforms in the country. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank all of you. Merci à tous. Et merci au FIFDH de nous avoir permis d'avoir ce débat. Je rends le micro.
So tired.